Thank you, Acting Speaker. I rise to support these early childhood safety and working with children reform bills that are currently before the House. Acting Speaker, as a state member for Pascoe Vale, Brunswick West, but also as a local parent, I remain absolutely committed, as we all do in this place, to help keep our children safe. Because when hard-working local parents do the morning drop-off at a local childcare centre, they rightly expect their children will be placed in a safe, caring and nurturing environment. Because nothing is more important than the safety, welfare and well-being of children in our homes, our neighbourhoods, our streets and, of course, in our early childhood education settings. And from the outset, I also want to acknowledge the outstanding work of the vast majority of early childhood educators and care workers who are skilled, hard-working, professional and absolutely committed to protecting and caring for our youngest of Victorians. Educators, of course, are our greatest asset in keeping children safe in these education and care settings. However, following the absolutely distressing, horrific and disturbing allegations of several serious alleged incidences of child sexual assault, abuse and mistreatment in the early childhood education and care settings, including across Victoria, New South Wales and also Queensland, over the course of 2023, 2024 and 2025, these vile allegations highlighted the urgent need for further action by governments at the federal and state levels and the education care sector to further improve safety and quality of education and care standards, checks and balances across the country and in this state. And as a state member of parliament, and again as a local parent, I was absolutely sickened and horrified by these allegations of abuse. They're shocking and painful for the families that are directly impacted, who are living every parent's worst nightmare, and also upsetting to many Victorians more broadly. I also acknowledge the overwhelming number of well-intentioned and hard-working early childhood staff again who feel betrayed also by these events. Those accused of these horrific crimes, if found guilty, should only face the very toughest of consequences. That's why our Victorian Labor Government commissioned the rapid review of child safety, led by former South Australian Premier Weatherill, AO, and Pam White, PSM. And the review made 22 recommendations to drive urgent improvements in child safety, which the Victorian Government has accepted and committed to implementing. The review found, and I draw the House's attention to page 4, quote, "Over the past decade, the early childhood system has undergone rapid growth. This growth has occurred without a coherent plan. Rather, the market has been left to respond to financial incentives that do not drive investment in quality, safety or in a stable, well-supported workforce. Since 2015 in Victoria, the number of long day care services has grown from 1,280 to 2,049, a 60% increase in services in 10 years. Of the 769 new long day care services in Victoria since 2015, 726, that's 94%, are operated by for-profit providers. For-profit long day care services in Victoria, the report found, are more likely to be rated as working towards national quality standards than not-for-profit long day care services, and less likely to exceed national quality standards. They're also more likely to be working towards quality Area 2, child health and safety, and less likely to exceed quality 2 than not-for-profit long daycare services. There are now thousands of early childhood services in Australia run by providers with a complex array of business structures and priorities. And the sector faces significant workforce challenges, including shortages, casualisation and the use of labour hire and high turnover rates. In Victoria, 66.8% of long day care and standalone kindergarten service staff have worked at their service for 3 or fewer years, including 22.7% for less than 1 year. An analysis of large providers nationally by the Australian Competition Consumer Commission showed not-for-profit long day care services had a 27% turnover rate, and for-profit services had a 41% turnover rate, double the rate. Essentially, far too many for-profit providers have been responsible for putting profits before children, putting profits before the safety of children, putting profits before staff recruitment, training and retention, putting profits before good centre governance, oversight and fostering a safe culture of children, families and staff alike, and putting business interests first ahead of the safety and wellbeing of children. And when combined, the review sought to respond to these and other varying organisational, staffing, care and oversight issues experienced across the sector. And the review's recommendations were directed at taking the steps necessary to ensure predators do not get into the early childhood care system, that if they do, they're quickly detected and excluded, and finally that we make sure such predators never work with children if detected again. On the 27th of August 2025, the first tranche of urgent reforms as recommended by the review were introduced by our Victorian Government to strengthen Victoria's working with children's laws enacted. Key changes included ensuring that anyone banned from child-related work interstate will be banned in Victoria, and requiring a working with children clearance to be immediately suspended while it is under reassessment for intended revocation with no exceptions. We also banned mobile phones and personal devices in early childhood settings. Now the additional reforms contained within these bills before us will further strengthen these safeguards and standards for children's staff centre operators via these bills. And when combined, they'll expand the social service regulator, establish a new Victorian Early Childhood Regulatory Authority, support changes to national law and national approach, amongst many other reforms. In terms of expanding the social services regulator, it will now bring the Working with Children check, reportable conduct scheme and child safety standards under the one roof of this regulator by 2026. The regulator will have the authority to act swiftly and decisively and have the power to immediately reassess, refuse, suspend or revoke working with children's checks when credible information is received. This will be backed by a new intelligence and risk assessment unit, giving the regulator access to evidence-based tools to assess risk and ensure consistent and robust decision-making. Mandatory child safety training and testing will also be introduced for all working with children's check applications, and employers and volunteer organisations will be required to notify the regulator when they engage in a working with children check holder, ensuring real-time oversight and accountability. In line with recommendation 6.2 of the rapid review, the VECRA will no longer review working with children decisions. Instead, an expert panel with specialist skills will ensure decisions are made by those with knowledge and experience to protect children. And the legislation builds on urgent reforms already delivered, as I said, around including automatic bans for individuals prohibited from child-related work in other states and territories and immediate suspension for working with children clearances that are under review, again with no exceptions. And the rapid review highlighted that children with disability may be at high risk of abuse. So in addition to these reforms, we're bringing the Disability Services Commissioner, Victorian Disability Worker Commissioner and Disability Worker Registration Board into the expanded regulator. And I draw the House's attention to the contribution of the member for Greenvale in that regard. When it comes to Victorian Early Childhood Regulator Authority, we introduced the legislation to create VECRA, which will replace the Quality Assessment and Regulation Division QUAD, operating independently from the Department of Education, as recommended by the review. VECRA will be a nation-leading statutory authority that will begin operations in January 26, led by a dedicated early childhood regulator. It will more than double compliance checks across services, giving parents confidence that their children will be safe and well cared for. And the new regulator will oversee early childhood worker register established earlier in July this year, which already includes more than 68,000 staff working in services that receive kindergarten funding. We're changing national law, of course, too. All states and territories have agreed to reforms to national law that ensure the safety and quality of early childhood education across the country. This bill will facilitate these changes to national law, and we're also including additional powers that will apply only in Victoria, going further than the national agreement. And these changes to national law include introducing a statutory duty to make safety, rights and best interests of children the paramount consideration of those who work in early childhood, mandatory child protection and safety training in all services, enhancing the regulatory tools available to address individual worker conduct, and increasing penalties and extra powers for regulators to take action against these providers. I also want to draw the House's attention to some feedback that I received from locals at the time of these allegations being aired earlier this year. I had an email from a lady, Renew, and she quotes, "As a grandparent of two young granddaughters, I'm writing with deep concern following the recent distressing news and the serious charges brought against an early childhood worker. It's deeply unsettling to hear time and time again of individuals in positions of trust within our community who pose significant threats, particularly in spaces meant to nurture and protect children," and she called for action. I got an email from a man by the name of Luke. I've spoken to all these people too, by the way, and he said, I quote, "I'm writing to you today as a concerned constituent and the parent of a young child in our local community. The recent harrowing news of alleged sexual assaults in Melbourne daycare centres has left my family shaken. The trust that families place in our early childhood education system is paramount. When this trust is horrifically violated, it sends a shockwave of fear and distress through the entire community, leaving parents questioning the safety of their children in environments that should be nurturing and secure, and the ripple effect on mental and emotional wellbeing of families is immense." Maxine also sent me an email and had an extensive conversation with her as well, but essentially her email to me said, "Thank you for your call earlier today. As per our conversation, I would like to see the government invest in more government-run and owned not-for-profit centres, prioritising child safety over workers' rights. When there is a substantiated claim, allegation or investigation, during any investigation, a worker should be stood down immediately. Suspension of working with children checks as well should take place, and parents must be notified immediately if an investigation is taking place, and parents should be able to prioritise their child's safety, not be worried about the financial impact of keeping them at home." And I say to Renew, Luke, Maxine and so many other residents who contacted me at the time, that's why this bill is before the House, to help make safety of your children, but all of our children in Marybeck, in Pascoe Vale, Coburg and Brunswick West, but across the entire state, the first priority when it comes to childcare, early childhood education and learning centres. And this, of course, also builds on the investments we've been making to improve early kinders across our community.